All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back for our final session of the 2023 Tomorrow's Leaders College program. My name is Allison Ali, and I will be your moderator for today's Career Growth Workshop, Building Your Career Toolbox. I'm a second-year student at Ohio State, and I've been involved with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation for almost a year now. I'm so excited to be moderating this session for you today. Before we begin, I've got a few housekeeping reminders. As always, feel free to use the Q&A feature to submit questions. In addition to the digital certification you will receive upon completing the program, you will have the opportunity to redeem digital badges to showcase your involvement in the program on LinkedIn and your resume. There are 3 badges you can earn: networking, advocacy, and leadership. To earn the networking badge, your first step is to introduce yourself in the networking channel on Slack and connect with 5 other attendees via LinkedIn using the profile links shared in the channel. To earn the advocacy badge, you will need to sign up for advocacy alerts using instructions found on cff.org. For the leadership badge, you will need to contact your local CFF chapter to learn about volunteer opportunities and upcoming CFF events, or get involved with your local Tomorrow's Leaders program for young professionals. Once you have completed all these tasks, you should email volunteer@cff.org to redeem your badges. Today's session is being recorded, and we would ask you to refer to the community guidelines being dropped into the chat. Please be kind, open-minded, and respectful of everyone's opinions and life experiences. Keep all breakout and chat discussions confidential. Use your real identity. Do not use malicious or offensive speech. And finally, do not ask for or give medical advice. If you have any technology problems during the session, please email volunteer@cff.org. Now, as we enter the panel portion of our time today, I'd like to introduce our 2 speakers. Christina Majka is a member of the National Tomorrow's Leaders Committee and has volunteered in various capacities with the CF Foundation over the past 12 years. She has 16 years of career education experience and currently serves as a career coach for the York County School Division in Yorktown, Virginia. Thank you for joining us today, Christina.
Thank you all for having me. And I just want to say one thing as I'm talking to our next generation of the career workforce. I was inspired by a former student of mine to get involved with the CF Foundation. And I just want you to know the impact and influence you have on not just your peers and not just on those, excuse me, who are younger than you, but also those who have paved the way long before, but you need to know how impactful you all are and are going to be in the future.
Thank you so much for that. I think that really speaks to this group. We've been seeing a lot of great leadership, great involvement from this cohort, so thank you. Our next speaker is Harris Markowitz. He is a senior vice president within the asset management group at Clarion Partners. Harris is also an avid volunteer for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation for the last 14 years, and he is a current board of director member for the Greater New York chapter and is the chair for the National Tomorrow's Leaders Committee. Welcome, Harris.
Thank you, Allison, for that great introduction, and welcome to all of you. I don't know how I can follow up what Christine just said, but I just want to, say, the sooner you can begin your volunteer experience, the more connected you feel and more of an impact you feel like you will have moving forward and being able to grow with the foundation. A few little tidbits that you may have already heard, but when I started with the foundation, I was only 25 years old. I'm now 40. At 25, the average age of someone living with CF was roughly 38. Today, it's 56. At the time, people were lucky to just go to college. Now we're hearing more and more of people living with CF, starting families, having careers, and having children, frankly, that just, when I started to volunteer was unheard of. So it really is an exciting time to be part of the foundation. And I really give props to all of you for making the time, especially on your summer vacation, for being here, not just tonight, but the other several sessions that were had. So again, thank you and welcome to all of you.
All right, thank you, Harris. All right. So my first question for you two is, just to begin this topic, This entire workshop is about career growth. So why is building career skills such as interviewing and networking important?
All right, so something that I hear from industry professionals, human resources managers, hiring experts, is that our workforce, our young workforce coming out of high school, coming out of trade schools, military training, 2 or 4 year colleges, apprenticeships, anything like that, they have the hard skills. They have the knowledge base to do the job. What they see as lacking skills and lacking traits are the soft skills. And these are the things that are harder to teach. And understanding how your soft skills play into interviewing, networking, and being on the job is such a valuable tool that's just going to put you, over the edge of not just having your heart, not just having your passion, not just having your degree, not just having your, your knowledge of the career that you're going into or the field that you're going into, but understanding how valuable those soft skills are going to be as well.
And I'll just add on to that of I'll take it as simple as, do you want a job, right? I mean, you can't get a job without interviewing, and it's becoming harder and harder to get a job without even networking or knowing the field you want to work in. And the only way to do that is through interviewing. So it's kind of a little bit of a circular reference. And I think this holds true in every part of your career. For example, I'm working with someone now. We've been working together for the last 3 or 4 years, and she's not happy, and she's waiting for my company to figure it out for her and find her a position. And as I keep trying to tell her, you have to assume that that's not going to happen. And I've gone through this myself, right? I was in an unhappy state at work, and I actually interviewed at several firms. And one of the best parts about interviewing is it lets you know if you actually like both what you're doing and the firm you work for. So I feel like in our parents' generation and the baby boomer generation, there's a little bit of a negative connotation. Oh, if my boss finds out I'm interviewing, I'm going to be let go. And that's actually not true. I think no matter where you are, whether it's, college interviewing for a master's program or a job interview, right? It's very important. And I think that's exactly what we're talking about tonight. It's very important to come off being genuine and engaging. No one wants to be working with people that are just there checking a box.
Those are some great responses from both of you. I think really important things for us to hear as, we're all looking for jobs and college opportunities, things like that. So then what would be some of your top tips to prepare for an interview or a networking event?
Harris, you can go ahead and start this time if you want.
Sure. Top tip number 1 is to actually know something, as have a little factoid information as to the company you're interviewing for. When I interview people and they actually know something about the firm, a little bit as to the industry you work in, no matter what level, even especially at the entry level position, it's actually really important to hear that they've done a little bit of research. I think it's very important to dress the part, right? Tonight, I asked, Erin Allison, what should I wear, right? That's an okay question to ask. In the virtual world, right, it's making sure you have the appropriate background. That's become a super important thing. You have to remember, whenever you're walking into an interview, you're being judged from the moment you walk in, and it's not judged based upon are you pretty or ugly. It's judged upon, are you put together, are you dressed appropriate, right? If you're working at a tech firm, you may not walk in with a suit and tie. Just like if you're interviewing for a financial services firm, you shouldn't be walking in jeans type of thing. And likewise, you should always have, in my world, a resume on hand, right? Because it's more likely than not that someone may have deleted that, and then you're having to start over. And it also, frankly, the resume kind of provides a little bit of your cheat sheet, so you should think of it as such. right? You shouldn't have handwritten notes on it, but it kind of keeps a little bit to your story, making sure you're hitting all the bullets you want to hit on. And I think, the last thing I would say is make sure, and I know I said it, and you'll hear it all night. It's the engaging part, right? Make sure you're giving who's ever interviewing the eye contact, whether it's in a video camera or whether it's in person, because that really does go a long way.
Awesome. So I want to ask our participants a question, and I want them to, as I'm giving a little bit of tips on this topic, I want y'all to be able to answer in the chat. I want to know how many of you are terrified of networking. So if you are terrified of networking, either write yes or I'm terrified or something in the chat. And if you're not terrified of networking, feel free to respond as well. Show your strengths, show your confidence. But if you are terrified of networking, let me know. All right, I'm seeing a lot. I'm seeing a lot of yeses. So as y'all are answering, to hit on a couple of things. So he was talking about how generationally things have changed in the workforce. And that is something that's so valuable to understand as a young adult, is things have changed since, your older siblings or family members have gone through in different levels of generations. And so as well intention that they might be, sometimes you might not want to take advice from someone who is not in the industry that you are looking to work in, or is of a more experienced generation that has not interviewed or switched industries or switched jobs in a long time. It's important to understand and keep up with those trends, just like you change your fashion or hair or, your music taste every couple of years, the workforce changes just as rapidly, if not faster. So it is important to know what those trend changes are when it comes to professional dress, interviewing, and even networking. So something as simple as a business card. Business cards they're not rare, but there's been a huge shift to a digital business card versus paper printed, and they'll just scan the card or scan a QR code, and your contact information and business information will just be imported into their phone. So there's just lots of things that you want to make sure that you understand, and the more you know, the more confident and comfortable you're going to be in your interview. So like Harris said, be knowledgeable of the company that you are applying to and interviewing with. Not enough people do that. You've probably heard that before. You've probably heard that several times before, but still, people don't do it, and it takes 5 minutes to do. But it's just something that if 10 people are interviewing for that job, you might be the only person that has taken that time and taken the initiative to do that research and be able to speak about that company and answer the question, why do you want to work for us? Or why do you think you'll fit in with XYZ corporation? So that's super, super valuable. And the other things about preparing for an interview, and this is actually something I learned on a panel last summer with our Tomorrow's Leaders sessions. It was a recruiter for American Eagle on the corporate level. And I learned something from her. She said, even at the corporate level, when she does interviews, finds it kind of strange for people to be in professional dress when they want to work for American Eagle. So even as a executive in that company, like, they would prefer you in their attire and in their apparel during an interview than, put together and not looking like, you grab some American Eagle apparel from when you're 15. But I just thought that was really interesting. So that was definitely a tidbit or an updated trend that I had not heard. And as far as networking goes, so
I'm going to interrupt you one sec. I'm going to interrupt you one sec, because you and I both said the same thing, slightly different. But how is someone supposed to know how to dress? Like, how would a person interviewing an American know that that's the attire they want you to interview in?
That's a great question. I mean, I would never tell someone, going for a corporate job to dress casually, in the apparel of the job that they're applying for. Now, I always do say if you're going for a creative career, if you are going into graphic design, if you're going into fashion, if you're going into something like that, you can definitely play around a little bit more with your interview attire. And you should always be yourself. And, you don't want to go into a department store and have someone dress you because you say, hey, I'm going to an interview. But I think there's still a lot of value in professionalism. And I think you're not going to get a job. Let me rephrase that. If you show up in a professional attire for an executive at American Eagle, I don't think they're going to hold that against you. I think more times than not, if you're casual and a little too laid back, that's definitely going to be held against you a lot more. But as far as networking goes, I do see so many of you have said yes, absolutely, a little bit. I just don't know how to do it well. And I absolutely love the person who said, I'm not scared to network, so go you. It terrifies me. That's why I wanted to ask the question. It's something that I'm not comfortable with small talk, but yet I teach it all the time. And there's going to be a few other things about networking that we're going to talk about tonight. But I think with anything, if it's something that you're not comfortable with, how do you ever get more comfortable with something? It's to do it. It's to practice. It's asking for help. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but those things for sure.
And I would just say too, I think you become less scared when you feel confident in what the networking is about, right? There's all different types of networking, but if you're going into the networking event and you feel confident in the subject matter, that makes it a lot easier to talk about than it, because you don't want to go in where it becomes uncomfortable, at least, in my opinion, is when, and I'm just going to compare it. You go into a cystic fibrosis event and you're talking about the weather, right? The weather's nice for a hot second, but if the whole point of the networking event is to talk about young professionals for cystic fibrosis, well, that's the subject matter. So if you feel confident that helps, and obviously the hardest thing I think is always going up to strangers. But I don't think I've ever been, and again, at 40 years old, I feel uncomfortable. So, I'm with you. It's uncomfortable, but I also think I've never been in a situation where I've gone up to people and they just flat out talk to me. I actually think it was harder in college, frankly, in that situation. But I think as you get older and go more in your professional career, it actually is a bit easier.
Yeah, if you're at a networking event, that's the purpose of it. And I just want to add one more thing before we get to the next question. When you're networking, please make sure that you keep it 50-50. You are listening as much as you are talking. The biggest turnoff for networking is going to be if you, just completely take over the conversation, especially if it is like a speed networking type event where you have limited time with each person. You 100% want to make sure that it's a give and take conversation and that you are both bringing worth to the networking that you're doing.
Thank you both for those great responses. I mean, I definitely learned a lot. I never would have guessed American Eagle wanted, casual apparel or, a lot of that stuff about networking. I know, everyone has great ideas when it comes to this, and we all pick up tips and tricks along the way. So I want to take this time for our participants. If you've got some networking tips, some interviewing tips, go ahead and share them in the chat right now. We can just take a little second to learn from each other as we move on with this. All right, and then our next question, our next kind of topic, kind of branches straight off of that. Beyond, your apparel, the 50-50, what is something that makes a candidate stand out, whether it's traits, composure, things like that?
I'll start off. I would say the biggest thing that makes a candidate stand out is, again, I know I keep saying engagement, but I told you that's gonna be my buzzword, is making sure, and but to that end, it's keeping the conversation going, right? The best interviews are the ones where it doesn't feel like an interview, and that's both the same for a candidate and the person interviewing, right? And frankly, you are gonna have interviews that feel much more like an interview, where you're given a 30-minute interview, in 15 minutes you're like, okay, I've talked about everything I'm going to talk about, right? So you're not, but really the best interviews is the one where it's talking back and forth, right? The person interviewing you is gonna ask you, to tell them about yourself. They're going to tell you about themselves. Then the best thing is to then ask a follow-up question at that point, and hopefully then keep it more conversational rather than question and answer.
Absolutely. A conversation is probably the best feeling that you can have leaving an interview. And it's the best feeling that you can get being the interviewer. I want to hit one more time on, something that stands out is when your answers stand out. And that goes back to knowing about the company and looking back at the job posting before you go to the interview. Look at those keywords that they put in the job posting. I always suggest, if you apply for a job, because those postings might not last very long, is that you actually screenshot it or you save it so that you can refer back to it. Because using the language that they use in the job posting, that's going to help you stand out as well. It's just going to put you just that little step above everybody else. And Stephanie, I just want to acknowledge your tip in the chat as far as your nerves, saying that before you go in an interview, you look in the mirror and do a power pose and you hype yourself up. Nobody's a better hype person than yourself, because you know your skills, you know your strengths, you know the background that you have, you know that if you got an interview for the job, that you're qualified for it. They don't waste time on interviewing people that they don't plan on giving that job. So just know that if you have received an interview, that you deserve to be there, and you want to make sure that to stand out, that you are prepared to be in that interview. And I think it's important to obviously think about the questions that you think you might be asked in an interview, and definitely think about what your responses would be, but don't practice so much that your responses sound super, robotic.
That is the word. That is the biggest key. Is you want to be yourself. But let your personality shine during the interview. So, like Christina said, you use the mirror to help your confidence, right? Watch the and all of the call it the silent fillers. Exactly what I just did. But also allow your personality to come through, because remember, this is the person that's probably hiring you is the person you're going to be working with. And you don't want them to see, you don't want this to be Heckle and Jive, where they're interviewing one person and they end up getting another person, because again, that's also not fair to both you and them.
All right, thank you both. Stephanie, that's a really great example. I think we're just gonna keep hitting that. But kind of going off of it, we are our biggest type people, we know our strengths. And then something else that, I've been asked in interviews, I think a lot of people get asked, is what are your weaknesses? What are things you can work on and grow with? So if everyone who feels comfortable could put in the chat, just what's something you want to work on? What's like a professional trait, a career goal, anything like that you want to work on.
And let me just say how important it is to acknowledge your weaknesses, because no matter how hard we try to know everything and how perfect we try to be, it's not possible. And I will say, as you get older, the more you realize that, and the easier it is to swallow that pill. It's also it is a tough question in an interview for people who might not be prepared for that answer. So make sure that you are prepared. and Harris might be able to speak to this better, but I mean, in most situations that I've ever heard from hiring managers, people who are giving me feedback after being interviewed, is weakness is a pretty standard question.
It is. It's 100% a standard question. I think I'm always shocked when people stumble upon that question because you can't look at weakness as a negative. Weakness just means it's something you want to work on and what you could do better with. So when my weakness that I always say is kind of a standard weakness, but it is, again, you're going to take a negative and make it a positive, is I'm too detail oriented. Again, that's actually a positive trait, but being too detail oriented in a work setting is actually sometimes a negative because it means you get stuck on things. But when a hiring manager hears that, it's like, okay, never say I'm late for work or I oversleep. That's a weakness that people don't really want to hear. So really think about that.
Yeah, and as far as framing your weakness, like he said, it is important to acknowledge it. Don't ever say, any of those answers that are going to make you look irresponsible or poor employee on a regular basis. But always spin it in a way of either how that job can help you improve in that area, how you are being proactive in trying to do something that will, again, help you overcome that weakness. But it's 100% okay to acknowledge it. And Jackie, you were saying you want to work on having the ability to ask for help and tending to do everything on your own. I'm trying to think there's definitely some books. If you are a reader. If you're not a reader, there's probably the audio ones or quick podcasts and things like that. But I think almost, if I had to guess, and maybe y'all can support her in the chat, I already see a couple people saying that you feel the same way. I think the more that you realize that people feel that way and how much you appreciate when people help you, other people feel the exact same way when the help is reciprocated. So I think that's, again, something that I learned a little bit more as I've gotten older, is I do still tend to do everything myself and I don't want to be a burden of other people. But if it's in your field of work, they're probably going to have the same stressors or struggles or hangups that you do. And they probably would love to know that they're not alone. And again, just like the networking is 50-50, I think as long as the help is reciprocated, don't be afraid to ask for help. Y'all's generation is probably one of the most generous and compassionate generations in the history of generations.
I agree. I always go to I work in a team, and I have, about 4 junior people underneath me, but I work with a number of people in my firm, and I say the same thing over and over, which is work smarter, not harder, right? Just, when you see people working, till 10, 11 o'clock at night, that doesn't mean that they're doing a better job than you are. It could just very well mean that they're not asking questions. And the last thing a person wants when reviewing your work is to see that you were working on something for the last 2 days and then open up and there's a bunch of questions in it. So, people, the more willing and open you are to asking questions and feeling comfortable to ask questions, the more effective you'll be in a professional setting.
All right, great from both of you. Kind of going straight off that, what are some good questions for you to ask during an interview?
I would say the good questions to ask during an interview is questions about the firm or the company you're working for. That's always a good one. Question, the person interviewing should be telling you about the role. If they're not, I think that's a fair question to ask. I think another fair question to ask is, what do you, as the person interviewing you, like about the firm? I usually do. It's a 50-50 on this one of, well, what don't you like? Again, that's kind of I think it depends on how the conversation is going. So again, I wouldn't say that that's a standard question, but when people do ask me, I'm not turned off by it. I actually kind of appreciate it. I also I like the question of what, you know, even just, personal but not too personal, right? Like, what are some of the hobbies you like as a person? Again, you're trying to you want to get to know the person that you'll potentially be working with as much as they're trying to get to know you. So going a little bit less, professional, and going to that one layer below. Again, don't ask what their sexual preferences, right, or anything too personal, but asking what their interests are. Again, it helps leading to that conversation, because then you may also find, oh, you like fishing, I like fishing too. Have you been here? And blah, blah, blah. And it kind of leads a little bit more to that conversation.
Yeah, it is great if you can find a commonality with the person or panel that you are interviewing with. And always remember that the interview is equally you trying to determine if the job and that company is right for you. And so make sure that you are prepared with questions to ask that would be telling that it's going to fit your morals. It's going to fit your, it's going to fit your vibe. It's just make sure that, it's something that you are going to feel confident and proud of working there as well. So not just a specific question to ask, but just please always be prepared with questions to ask. I mean, that is just a guarantee. They're going to ask you at some point during the interview or at the end if you have any questions for them. And don't be afraid to bring a note card, typed up something. Don't have it on your phone. They don't want whip out your phone during it. But if you have, something that you have typed it up on, it just, again, it shows initiative. It shows that you care. It shows that this is important to you. And just make sure that if for some reason, even if you prepared 10 questions and they answered them all during the interview before you had a chance to ask them, just acknowledge that you had them. Just say, this has been a really great interview. I'll be honest, I did have several questions prepared, but you've answered them throughout the interview. And if you think of something else based on what they've said, add those in. But to just definitely be prepared with questions. The salary piece can be tricky depending on if the interview process might be 1, 2, or 3 interviews before they make a decision. Salary can be a touchy subject if it's not listed, and if that's the first question you ask. Same thing with time off.
Well, I'll say the salary for me, I would say, is, at least in my world, is a no-no. You wait to the end, wait till they give you the job, and then you could deal with the salary. That becomes a negotiation. And I would say the other big no-no in today's world is the remote work. Like, we're getting asked a lot of questions. Well, is this job fully remote, and blah, blah, blah. And again, that's kind of goes into the salary question, right? Wait to get the job. Let that, either if you already know about it, that's great. And if you don't, wait till the end. Typically on all the job listings, it'll either list hybrid or remote or fully in the office. But once that it's become such a hot topic in a professional setting that we prefer not hearing it from candidates, and wait to the end to talk about it. And I would also say, be respectful of who's ever interviewing you. Typically, the person interviewing you should tell you, this is a 30-minute interview. They should kind of set the expectation as to how long it'll be. When, I've interviewed candidates and they ask almost too many questions, and it's to the point when, okay, I'm sorry, I have to leave, because typically if you're interviewing, you're not their only interview of the day, and we usually stack up the interviews, in 30-minute increments for a full day. So And it's okay to not have all your questions answered, because trust me, you're going to meet multiple people that you'll be able to ask questions to as well.
Yeah. And Lee, I do want to go ahead and answer your question, or both of us can tackle your question. She said, if you're interviewing with multiple companies, one, is it okay to let them know that you're interviewing with other employers? And two, kind of how long can you ask, to wait if you are offered the job? So there's really no, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, because different industries are again very different. There's really no reason necessarily, unless they ask for you to bring up other jobs. That's just, or other interviews or other potential employers. One question that, is definitely, I think, will settle your stomach at the end of the interview is if they have not mentioned how long it will be until you hear from them, or until they get back to you or make a decision. To me, that's a great question to ask before you leave the interview, because, you go back to your apartment, you talk to your roommate, you call, your dad, and, say, oh yeah, the interview went great. And, they're probably gonna, first question they're going to have for you is, oh, when do you think you'll hear? And then you'll be like, I don't know. And I mean, this is really where every company is different. I mean, some people will call you that afternoon. Either way, so, some of them will say, well, we've got a few people left to interview. We'll let you know by the end of the week and end of the month, whatever. But I mean, HR can sometimes not be the fastest department in a company. And it also depends on how immediate the need is for that role to be filled. But I know someone who, I mean, they didn't hear anything for 2 months, and they got the job. So it's important to try to get an understanding of where they are in the hiring process and how long it might take, just so that for your own anxiousness and everything. And I would say, and Harris, I'd rather you answer this part, but I would say, if you are balancing different potential employers, and maybe one has offered you a job, but you really want another one and you haven't heard back from them yet, like, it obviously, if job A that's offered it to you, they're probably going to give you a time frame for when they want an answer. I know that in the jobs that I've acquired, they have always said, we need to know by this date if you plan to accept. But if you know that job B is going to make a decision on Friday and job A offered it to you on Wednesday and they want to know on Friday, it can be acceptable to ask if it's okay to make the decision on Monday, but you have to also accept if they say no.
I totally agree. I think the first part of the question, if you're interviewing multiple companies, is okay to let them know. I think it's the expectation that you're interviewing at multiple companies. I think if any company finds out that you put all your eggs in one basket with them, I think that almost makes them feel more nervous. And I think it does, so I think that's the expectation. I think as far as, if you're offered a job elsewhere, I think, like Christina said, I think it's okay to let them know. I mean, one of the people we hired, we knew he was interviewing. He was the first one we interviewed, so we had, about 10 or 12 other people to get through, and he had to meet with multiple people on multiple days. We had to do that with everyone, and he ended up getting a job. And we were told that, and HR said, make a decision. And we all had to quickly regroup, and we made a decision, because we understand it's not fair to let anyone hang on. But I will also say, I think it actually helped him get the job, because it kind of shows it's kind of that thing that someone else wants you, so it kind of makes you more attractive. So that's the kind of not to say you should ever lie, but I'm just saying that's kind of a weird little factoid, at least in what we've seen. But I agree, it can take a while, so don't be nervous if it does take a while. When at my company, in my role when I started a number of years ago, I think I started interviewing in November, and I didn't start with them until February. Part of it was because I was their only candidate that was qualified, and they were having trouble finding other people to interview. But then you also have to remember, this is November. You deal with Thanksgiving, then you deal with Christmas, then you deal with New Year's. So you always have to be understanding that that depending on the different times of the year you interview could take longer than maybe someone else that that works at that same company.
All right, thank you both of you. Christina, a little while back, you had mentioned like some podcasts and books and things like that. Do you have any recommendations for the group?
So let me say one thing. I am how do I put this? Mm, I admire people who read. I admire people who love podcasts. I'm not a big reader, and I hate podcasts. I have a very skeptic brain when it comes to that. I'm not unaccepting of the information. There have definitely been a few books that I have read, and if I'm able to say this, I think one is like, something about, like, so you think, I don't even know how to become a badass in your life or something like that. I can't remember. It's the yellow cover and it's got the black font on it. I did read that and I really did enjoy it. If I'm gonna read a book, I'm gonna be on a really long plane ride, a cruise ship, or just sitting on the beach. So the reason I say that is because I truly don't love recommending specific books and podcasts, even ones that I have enjoyed and gotten information from, because, oh, Devin, awesome. I love that. You're reading that book right now. I hope you enjoy it. And so I don't love recommending it because I don't think there is a book or a podcast that is right for everyone, that gives, again, the perfect information and just everything that everyone should do the exact same way. I think it's great to find ones that resonate with you. I think it's great to find authors and speakers who you trust. I don't think you should just bandwagon books and podcasts simply because they're trending or popular. I really do think that it's important if you are a reader and if you enjoy podcasts. I think it's good for you to test lots of different waters to know that you are going to grow from reading those books and grow from learning those podcasts in the direction that you want to grow from someone that you feel like you can trust.
Great, thank you. And then Harris, we've heard you're very involved in your work. You're very involved with Mars Leaders and CF Foundation. I think you said 14 years, correct, with the foundation?
Yeah.
So how do you balance work and self-care / avoid feelings of burnout?
I would say anyone who is a doer, and I think all of you on this call today are doers. Again, like I said, because you've given up your part of your summer vacation to join us. You never feel like you can avoid it. The biggest thing is to manage it, and you have to find personal time for yourself. A big thing for me, for example, is I enjoy the gym, right? I get anxiety. I get almost the shakes when I don't work out at some point during the day. But even with that, it's managing your time to do that. So, for example, today I worked until about 5:30. I knew I was going to be on tonight at 6:45. That gave me an hour and 15 minutes. Well, what type of workout could I do in an hour and 15 minutes? And I chose to do a 30-minute Peloton, where normally I would do an hour and a half workout. So I think it's balancing what's right for you and making sure that you take time out for yourself. Now, other people, they would rather work out in the morning. I'm not a morning person. I like sleeping in the morning, go straight to work, because if I start working out in the morning, unless I'm traveling for work, it usually means my mind's already going and thinking about work. So it really is making sure you're taking some point of the day out for you, whether that's 30 minutes or whether, an hour or however much time you need during the day to recharge. Because what will happen is you go from 6 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night and then go to bed and you start the whole thing over. You really will burn out. And I will also say too, if you're doing stuff that you really love to do, it doesn't feel like you're going to burn out. Being with all of you tonight, this is what I enjoy doing. I enjoy talking as much as I can talk. Again, I think from Christina, I have to learn the 50-50 a little bit better. But to me, this is fun. And that's what's important. It took me a long time in my career to find a job that I can really enjoy. So whenever every day I go to work, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like I'm contributing to something, right? I'm doing something that I love. So that's and I didn't always feel that way. And that's the key lesson, is that when you find things that you love, you're not gonna burn out. Again, companies give you time for vacation. Use that vacation time. I promise you, I take vacations once a quarter, but I work all throughout my vacation. And part of that is a personal preference. It's no one telling me that, but I don't like coming back from vacation after being off for a week and having 1,000 emails to go through. I'd rather take 30 minutes every day on my vacation to read. I do it once a day, maybe twice, to read the emails so I know I'm up to speed. So when I come back on that Monday, I feel refreshed, but I also don't feel behind. But that's what works for me. Other people that go on vacation and they do the same thing, they say, I feel like I didn't have a vacation. Okay, well, I didn't ask you to read your emails. I was emailing you so I don't forget to email you, but that's not meaning to be that I want you to respond back to me, because I know you're on vacation. So again, this is not a one size fits all. And I would say in today's world, you are entering at the perfect time by being in a hybrid environment, because I think that new employees have more flexibility than ever before. And I think one of the things we all learned during COVID is the importance of flexibility in the workplace environment.
Great, thank you. Just before we switch to our Q&A portion, keep entering those questions in the chat. For both of you, what is one thing you would tell your college self?
So much, you guys, so much. My 20th high school reunion is this fall. So 16 years from being removed from college. I would tell myself so much. I think one thing is, you definitely don't have to have it all figured out when you graduate college. You can still be 37 or 40, still figuring out. My dad is 82, and he still jokes that he doesn't know what he wants to be when he grows up. So you don't have to have it all figured out. I think I would also just touch back on what some of all of your biggest concerns were in the chat earlier, as far as perfectionism and not asking for help and things like that. It's just the sooner you can understand that, and the sooner that you can grasp that being perfect is, first of all, impossible. And second of all, that's where you're gonna burn yourself out. The job might not burn you out. You're gonna burn yourself out by trying to be perfect and doing everything yourself. So I think I would also just say, well, first of all, let me go back to what Harris said. Please use your time off. Please take care of yourself. You need it. You need that break. Figure out when you work hard, and then figure out when you have those windows of opportunities to take care of yourself. It's just all of those things, just take care of yourself. You don't have to have it all figured out. You're not perfect. Ask for help. And it's okay to change your mind.
And I would say to make sure you have fun That I feel like that sounds like a little bit of an oxymoron telling college students to have fun, but I think I certainly did and did not. I was so career minded and career oriented. To give you an idea a little bit about my college background, as Christine said, it's okay to change. I started as a pre-med major. I went to George Washington University in DC, and I wanted to switch to business, and I was very afraid to tell my parents to switch. So I was forcing the pre med. I became an EMT, and I didn't enjoy that. I went through the bio lab, and I cut through. I was dissecting the pig, and I cut through something, and the TA said, "I've never seen anyone do it." It turned out I cut through the aorta, and he says, "I don't know how anyone could ever do that. It's the largest vein in the body." Again, because I just didn't care. I finally did switch to economics, and I didn't like that because it was too theory based. So then I finally switched again to the business school where I heard horror stories about accounting, and then I ended up falling in love with it, and that became my major. So that's when I knew it was right. So I promise you, for those of you older people, you've already figured out. For those of you that are younger that are still trying to figure out what to do, when you find the thing that you really enjoy, you'll know it, and stick with it. The other thing is again, don't forget to have fun. What I did, I ended up becoming interning my sophomore year at Merrill Lynch, interning my junior year at Ernst & Young. I said I was never going to join a fraternity. You think joining a fraternity would be fun. I ended up becoming a founding father, a treasurer, president. I ended up becoming vice president of judicial affairs for the All Interfraternity Council. So even in something that was supposed to be fun, I treated it like a job and felt like I had to keep moving up. And it's taken me a long time to realize that no matter what setting you're in, college or not, to keep it fun. And when it stops being fun, to then learn how to step away. Because you don't want to miss a moment. College you get once in your lifetime. It's only 4 years. It flies by. Everyone will tell you that. And before you know it, you're going to be working. So just take a moment to really appreciate this time. And I think the last thing I would tell myself is I wish I would have studied abroad, and I was nervous to do so. And now that I actually travel a lot overseas, I do appreciate being able to travel overseas, but definitely there would be nothing like studying abroad in college overseas. So again, if you haven't considered it, consider it.
All right. So we're starting the Q&A portion for the last little bit of our time. The first question that we got in the chat is, what is the best way to frame your weakness? Is there a formula or best practice?
Yeah, I mean, I think
I would say, oh, go ahead.
No, you got it, Harris. It's fine.
I was gonna say, I think you got to frame your weakness as spinning around to be a positive. Like I said, saying you're too detail oriented is somewhat of a positive, right? Being too much of a perfectionist is somewhat of a positive. So make sure that you phrase it in such a way that it's something you want to work on, but not something that is a detriment to either you or anyone you'd be working with. Christina, would you add anything else to that?
That's great.
All right. And then there was another question. That was, what is one thing you're excited about as this generation moves into the workforce?
A lot. Like I said before, so for the past 16 years, I've taught high school, and every question that I get asked when people find out what I, as a high school teacher, was, I don't know how you do it, or how do you do it, or are they on their phones the whole time, or things like that. And I see such a wonderfully unique similarity about your generation. And like I said before, it's just y'all just have a next level of passion and compassion and taking action. on them. And I love that.
I'm excited to have people continue to help me learn the tech world. One of my friends and I have been talking about AI, and and she works for Google, and that's been one of her tasks to lead up her team is on AI, and she's deathly afraid of it. So I think it's no lie that as you get older, you become less tech savvy. So I am excited to have all of you teach me a thing or two about the best way to connect with other people virtually. And I'm excited to help you connect to people in person.
Thank you both. And then this will be our final question. Do you have any tips for building time management skills or not losing track of time as a young adult?
I think the first thing to recognize is, what are your distractions? You need to recognize what your distractions are before you can get a handle on your time management. The things, and I'll say you have to figure out what works for you. The things that work the best for me is I have to have a to-do list on paper. I get such satisfaction from crossing through it or checking it off. And that helps drive my want to keep getting things done on my to-do list. I think for a lot of people, time blocking helps. If you say, every day I'm gonna have, I know who doesn't love a good list. Like Harris said, with it, with gym time and volunteer time and work time and travel time, is understanding what you need to get done and piecing that into what's going to work for your your lifestyle and what's going to work for your daily things. At this point in my life, I have to put everything in a calendar. Even sometimes I have to remind myself to eat lunch. I'll put that on my calendar if I know it's going to be a super busy day or if I have back-to-back meetings. So, and I know that my phone can certainly be a distraction like everybody else. And I can't believe sometimes how long I've been on Instagram. And I have a second job aside from my full-time job. And so I know that I need to block time and dedicate time for that as well. So those are the things that I would say. And I know Harris probably has some great advice for that too.
Well, I'd also say it's to-do list, and it's also prioritizing your to-do list of what's due tomorrow versus what's due next week. Because my biggest problem with to-do lists is you just keep adding more stuff and more stuff and more stuff. And before you know it, you have a 40 item to-do list, and you say, well, how do I get through all this? Well, because that 40 item to-do list isn't everything for you to get done today. So it's a to-do list. It's almost having, for me myself, I have multiple to-do lists to make sure that I'm prioritizing what I actually need to get done. And I also think it's okay to have to-do lists both for your professional life and your personal life. My partner and I, we force ourselves to have a to-do list that I wake up and I say, okay, Josh, what do we need to get done today? So again, I can prioritize how much time I can spend, because sometimes for work, I can only spend 6 hours of the day, right, working, because I have to take the dog to his grooming appointment, right? I'm doing a home renovation. What do I have to do for the home renovation today? So it's just so again, it's making sure your time between your professional life and your personal life coincide with one another, not compete with one another.
And
And
I feel I was
go
just going to say with that, and going back to a distraction. So I personally know that my phone can be a distraction. It hasn't been as much lately because again, I acknowledged it, and I actually spoke with someone about it because I didn't really think that I could get a handle on that on my own. And something that I don't personally do right now. I think if I lose self-control over it again, I will. But I know someone who, because let me just say, brain breaks at work will help you perform better in the long run. So I am definitely an advocate for brain breaks. So I do. I will get on social media because my second job requires social media a lot. But I know someone she sets a timer, when she needs a brain break and she wants to scroll Instagram or TikTok or, Snapchat a couple of people, she'll set a timer for maybe like 12 minutes. And when the time's up, she knows she's got to get back to work.
All right. Thank you both for those amazing. We have hit 8 p.m. Eastern time. I want to turn it over to Harris real quick to talk about the Tomorrow's Leaders program in general, and then we will finish our Tomorrow's Leaders College program for 2023.
So as I start off, I just wanted to once again thank all of you for joining us for this program. This is the third year that we're holding the Tomorrow's Leaders College program. I am the national chair for all of Tomorrow's Leaders. I've been part, as Allison noted, I've been part of the CF Foundation for 15 years, but I've been part of the young professional program for the last 13 years of that. I helped design, roll out, and now am the national chair for the full program, which encompasses about 1,200 young professionals across the 70 or so chapters across the whole United States. So this is a national program. We are the only nonprofit to have a national young professional program. And that is because the CF Foundation recognizes the importance of younger people growing and starting them out as soon as they graduate college, and even while they're in graduate, knowing that they're going to grow within the CFF community, with the intent that hopefully when you graduate, you become part. And hopefully, my role is trying to encourage you all to join us as part of the greater Tomorrow's Leaders program, where there's both local and national opportunities. National opportunities being like what Christina and I and Allison have been doing, and local programs, just smaller fundraisers, walks, climbs, galas, you name it, we have it, right? And then with the intent that 15, 20, 25 years, both hopefully we find a cure for cystic fibrosis. That's our ultimate goal here, but also help you grow within the chapter and ultimately become board members. So I really, again, I can't say enough. Thank you so much for being here. I'll leave my contact info in the chat, but we'll also be contacting you directly with giving you more information as to how to get involved. So I really, again, can't thank you enough, and let me pass it off back to Allison to wrap us up.
All right. Thank you, Christina and Harris, for all of your wonderful advice and responses this evening. And thank you to all of our participants for being here, whether you were here for one session all the way up to all 4 of these. This is a great program, and I've seen in the chat you all have put so much into this program, and I hope you guys have gotten so much out. And so with that, this concludes Tomorrow's Leaders College Program 2023. If you want to stay for the optional networking session at the end to continue the conversation, feel free. Otherwise, thank you for joining us. All right, if you plan to stay on for the networking portion, we can take a little bit of just a quick couple-minute break. I know it can be hard to sit here for a while. Zoom fatigue is a real thing. How does everyone feel about coming back at around 7:08?